want to welcome you back to the Cibolo Center for Conservation and our Rooted in Resilience Water series. Many of you have been joining us the last 2 weeks, so I want to just say thank you for coming back and hope you've been getting some important and helpful information. As I've said before, water is a sacred resource, and so we wanted to put this workshop together for you to be informed, have more information about what you can do as a citizen to help protect our resources. The Cibolo started as a grassroots effort to clean up the Cibolo Creek, and here we are today, 37 years later, still preserving one of nature's most valuable resources. I work in the development office. My name's Brittany, if I didn't already say that, and I just want to say thank you to our sponsors of this workshop series, Culligan of the Hill Country, Southwest, and the Texas Water Company. They were generous sponsors who helped put this together, and so thank you to them. And if you're ever interested in learning more about the Cibolo, ways that you can be involved, volunteer, support, donate, just let us know. Happy to connect you to other opportunities here at the Cibolo. But right now, I'm going to turn it over to Kel. He is our Director of Land Conservation. So thank you so much again for being here tonight.
Thank you, Brittany. Howdy, folks. Like Brittany said, my name is Kel Hoffman. Recently started as the Director of Land Conservation, and this is our third lecture in this new lecture series on water in the Upper Cibolo Watershed. I'm excited to see a few people that we've seen a couple times now, so it's interesting that y'all are finding it interesting and coming back. Appreciate your attendance. If anybody would like to follow along with the slides tonight, we've got printouts that I can swing by and grab or give you one. Beyond that, if y'all can just maybe hold your questions till the end, I'll come around with a microphone that will pick up your question for our YouTube channel. And yeah, that's pretty much all of the logistics. I'm gonna go ahead now and introduce our two esteemed speakers. Our first speaker tonight is Joan Bryant, professional engineer with the San Antonio River Authority. Joan's an environmental engineer who spent years working on watershed health and community resilience projects all across the river basin. She's great at connecting the dots between data, people, and local action, and she's here to show how SARA is helping our creeks and rivers adapt to a changing hill country landscape. So we could all welcome Joan. And our other speaker tonight is Troy Dorman, PhD, PE from HAF Associates. Troy is a water resources engineer and a vice president over at HAF, where he's led a ton of stormwater and floodplain projects around South Texas. His work truly blends engineering and ecology, designing infrastructure that works with the land instead of against it. Tonight, Joan and Troy will outline some practical tools and on-the-ground examples for building watershed resilience in our own communities. We could all welcome them. Come on up.
Hello, everybody. Okay, so Kel gave us a wonderful introduction. Okay, but to introduce ourselves in our own words and describe what we do, I work as an engineer, and I have done a diversity of things related to water at the San Antonio River Authority. But I'd say, to sum up my job, I look at where the environment, the natural environment and the built environment meet, and where issues occur. So what's going wrong, why is it going wrong, but also what is working. And so you can see in this picture, concrete line channel, some negative effects, a huge 10-foot drop off. And so that sums up a lot of what I do. I look at degraded, eroding streams a lot, but sometimes I get to come to really beautiful places like this. So I'm excited to be here.
All right, thank you, Joan. Troy Dorman, I am also a water resource engineer, but I started out with a degree in hydrology. So it was a science-based degree. It was really learning about the land, learning about soil, learning about plants, learning a lot more about watersheds and their health and also their productivity from kind of an agricultural background. What I do is a little bit of everything in water. I actually work in water, wastewater, and stormwater runoff. So that's really a concept of blending everything into one water. It's all water is a resource. Unfortunately, like you, I spend a lot of time dealing with stormwater runoff problems, whether that is construction sites that are putting sediment into streams or onto other people's property, or looking at flooding issues, upsizing roads so that we can travel around safely, we can get our emergency managers back and forth, our emergency management personnel back and forth, but also just kind of looking at what's going on in a watershed at a watershed scale and say, what do we need to do different from the way that we've managed watersheds in the past? So we're going to talk through a few slides, and I guess we'll wait till the end for questions, but we're happy to answer any kind of question you have. Even if it doesn't come up on this slide, we'll take a stab at it. All right, here you go, Joe.
Okay, I'm gonna clip this on. I'll talk for a while. Okay, so to get started, it seems like a couple of y'all have gone to these series, so you probably already know what a watershed is, but I thought I'd start with this anyways. So this is the San Antonio River watershed. This is our jurisdiction. Unfortunately, we have a 4-county jurisdiction, and so we're funded by those county taxes. So as you can see, the Cibolo, Upper Cibolo is in the San Antonio River Basin, but it's actually not in our jurisdiction. So I'm sure that causes frustration for the people who live in it, but also the River Authority, where the river basins and then political boundaries intersect. But as you know, Cibolo is the baby blue there. All the other colored polygons are different watersheds, and they're all connected, right? So the Cibolo flows down, follows those arrows, and then eventually leads into the San Antonio River, to the San Antonio Bay, and to the Gulf. So what is a resilient watershed? And that'll look different for different watersheds, but some general ideas here, and especially where we live in the world of extremes, right? We have extreme droughts, and then we have flash floods. And so a resilient watershed will handle stress, so it can handle the droughts, it can handle the floods, but it also can handle everything in between and remain functional and healthy, adapts to change, and recovers naturally, so without human assistance or interference. And ours, does everybody know what native plants means? We hear that a lot, right? Okay. Yeah, I'm like, native plants, everybody's about the native plants. But just starting there, some characteristics of a resilient watershed. Having native plants with those deep, extensive root systems, one, to help gather and survive during drought periods, but also to protect our soil and our banks from erosion when we have those flash floods. And then importantly, healthy soils. So soils that have nutrients, aren't polluted, have a good infiltration capacity, are not super compacted. And then we go into how we develop impacts the hydrological cycle, right? And so anytime we develop, whether it's urban, agriculture, you are impacting how water and stormwater runoff interacts with the land. And so you see here in the pre-developed image on the left, you see here you have a lot less runoff, 10%, versus infiltration. And so because you have a surface where water can filter into it, you're getting that aquifer recharge, you're also getting more evapotranspiration, and you're getting less volume of water and the water moving slower to your creeks and rivers. And so as you develop and as you create surfaces that are impermeable, so water can't filter through them, that means a greater volume of water is flowing to your creeks and rivers at a higher velocity. And so less infiltration. And engineers have methods, design standards that we follow to help mitigate that. Detention ponds, low impact development, in different methods, but you are still impacting the hydrology cycle at the end of the day. Okay, so treating rain as a resource. I'd say historically, especially engineers, I think are bad at this, but designers and developers have treated rain like a nuisance, right? The job is get it off site as quickly as possible. We don't want it damaging our infrastructure. So it's been to concrete line, straighten channels, and get it off site. And so the thinking has been changing to look at water as a resource. And so looking at different ways to keep that water on site. So when water falls, keep it on site, try to improve infiltration, gather it in rain barrels, hold it, use it for irrigation. So looking at different ways to utilize water instead of just get it off your site as fast as possible. And so this graph here shows that the majority of our rainfall events are happening, they're small events, right? They're happening either 1 inch to 2 inch, and that is rainfall we can manage. And we can manage on site, but often we design for these large 100-year events. And so just looking at how we design and trying to handle both the smaller events and the larger events. Okay, so land conservation as flood mitigation. Land conservation is, I'd say, maybe one of the most effective ways, just conserving, preserving the land, and allowing that land to do what it does best, right? The way I think of it, nature already knows how to handle water, store water, slow water down, manage it, and then when we develop or design, there's these unintended consequences, and then we have to go back and spend more money to fix what we messed up. And so land conservation, and that can be through preservation easements or just intentionally preserving land on your property. So this is an example of a SPADA track. This is South San Antonio. And it's 380 acres, South San Antonio, that was donated to us by TJ Maxx, of all people. But you can see the TJ Maxx distribution center there. And they donated this property, and it's right along the San Antonio River. And so the San Antonio River Authority put a conservation easement on this land, which is a legal agreement stating that we will preserve this land. And there's very strict rules on how you manage it and how you, basically, if you're going to do any type of development, it's monitored. And so let's just see. So benefits of land conservation, especially near riparian areas, improving infiltration, recharge to your aquifers, also having that vegetation established in areas of flooding or the floodplain helps slow down water. Also creates habitat, which I'll do a little hide and seek if anybody can see where the animal is in this picture. This is one of our game cameras on this property. So this is within San Antonio city limits. Anybody? Any guesses? Yes. Oh, it's a little bobcat. Well, it's a mama bear bobcat. I think they're called queens. Troy, do you know? Well, she looks like a queen. And super exciting, she had little cubs. So we have a bunch of wildlife cameras on this property, and we see a lot of interesting things. But I thought this was one of the cutest and wanted to share. And one of the benefits of conservation easements and preserving land for large predators. And so some resources, especially if you have working lands, or if you don't, you can check out USDA's, U.S. Department of Agriculture's website, and they have a lot of good resources. if you're having a problem or just want to improve your site, make it healthier. So they'll help you address issues with soil, plants, energy, air, animals, water. So you can go to the site to check out all their resources, or if you want, you can meet one-on-one. They have local representatives. Okay, and riparian zones, and I am biased for sure, so just take this with a grain of salt, but I think riparian zones are so important, and if I had a large property with a river on it, I would preserve my riparian zone. I think they're crucial for trouts and flooding, to help keep those in their natural state with the native vegetation. They help act like a sponge during droughts, so they'll hold onto that water longer. They also, with that vegetation, help trap sediment. So over time, as you get these flooding events, you're gathering more sediment in that area, which then holds onto water and keeps this a healthy, functioning area. Erosion control, so having those native plants helps keep those banks stable. Those big root zones, you saw those act like rebar, they keep the bank there, they prevent erosion from happening. Like one example, this is also along the San Antonio River, and you can see it's a public park, and so they mow the whole thing. And they were mowing right up to the bank. And in this area especially, there were very sandy soils. And so one, you're just losing property, right? So when you get those floodwaters, high velocities come in, it'll just eat away at that bank. So mowing up to the bank, you're taking away those plants with those healthy root zones that are keeping it stable, and now your soil is just free to wash away. And then it's a few years later. This is a different season on Google Earth. I'm not trying to trick you, but I just couldn't find a month to compare to. And this is about a decade later, and the riparian buffer could be bigger, but not going to complain because there is improvement. They've allowed the vegetation to establish there, trees to come in, and now it's stable. They're not having as much erosion issues. And then if you are confused on where your riparian zone is, one thing I would look at, or a good starting point, would be your floodplain. And so I would say preserve your floodplain. And there's a lot of resources to figure out where floodplains are. This one is FEMA's base flood elevation. So there's Bernie there, everything in the pink, 100-year floodplain. And it's also a great site, and they have reports that really break down the language of flooding, because I think the language related to flooding can be confusing to hear a 100-year storm, or just understanding the uncertainty that comes with these models and the floodplains. My mom's a real estate agent, and when she's about to sell a house or showing a house, she calls me all the time. And it's funny because she calls and she asks, like, I'm her professional engineer, and she's like, hello, Miss Bryant, could you please look up an address for me? And she asked me to look up an address, and I look it up, and it may not be in the floodplain, but it's adjacent to it, right? It's right next to it. And I just give her my professional opinion, right? And stating that the floodplain, yes, it'll determine if you need flood insurance or not, but it's not like a guarantee. It's a simulation of reality. Yes, there's not a wall that will prevent this area from flooding. And so just understanding the importance of the floodplain, preserving them because of all the things we've said. But if you're curious, there's a few resources, and I think it's in all the pamphlets, good things to Google related to land conservation, as well as floodplain resources. Okay. some more cute pictures. Pause for cute pictures. Some project highlights. So we're going to talk about projects we have going on right now that are helping create a resilient watershed. So this is one of my projects I have going, where we actually get to study the upper Cibolo. And this is because we applied for a grant with the Department of Defense. It's called the REPI Challenge Grant. And it is related to Camp Bullis, and they're part of what's called the Camp Bullis Sentinel Landscape. And so basically wanting to be good stewards of the land surrounding Camp Bullis, because what happens around Camp Bullis affects Camp Bullis, right? And being good stewards of a watershed affects the community that lives in it, the habitat, the wildlife, and also the military. And so we're looking at the hydrology and hydraulics of the watershed to determine where the best location for nature-based solutions would be. So we are looking for flood mitigation projects, but not traditional detention ponds, concrete line channels. We are focusing on nature-based solutions. And this is just a quick video to show the pink and red is development in the area. And so this is a 40-year time period, 1986 to 2022. So just to show the development that has occurred in this area. And I'll say, working at the San Antonio River Authority, there's a lot of lessons learned from working in a highly urbanized city. And I think this study will help try to be a little more proactive and apply some of those lessons learned. Basically, just outline of the study, identify areas that'll be best for projects, prioritize those projects, develop concept designs for those projects, do site visits and ground truth, and then quantify benefits of those projects. And hopefully after this study, we will apply for a second phase to that grant and be implementing those projects. Now I will switch it over to Troy. For YouTube.
Yes, for YouTube. For the tube. All right, great. So yeah, I'm going to switch over and talk a little bit locally about some of the things that we've been working on in Boerne for about the last, oh gosh, it's coming up on 10 years now. So half worked with the city of Boerne to develop the 2018 Uniquely Boerne Master Plan. I don't know if any of y'all sat in on that. I know they've been going through some updates on this. But you know what these comprehensive plans do is they really lay out what the community's vision is for what we want it to look like long term. And as part of that, some of the big overall goals were these, oops, that's not the, oh, I thought I had the, okay, which one was the pointer? In the middle, there it is. Okay, there's a red button, there's a green button. Okay, I gotta get the red color. So big picture things they wanted were to desire for improved walkability. That's really something that Boerne citizens have looked forward to. And we've helped to create some of the opportunity for that. It's not just about, you know, this is a great place to come and walk, but it's really nice to have neighborhoods and the rest of the city being walkable. Desire to preserve key natural assets, that was something that was very front, you know, in the front of everybody's minds when this was going on. Desire to balance development with quality of life. Joan showed how development has impacted the watershed. In the past, a lot of the things that we've done as engineers, as civil engineers, have not really looked at quality of life, unfortunately. We've developed neighborhoods, but we haven't really developed neighborhoods that really created a good quality of life for the people that live there. By creating car-centric communities too, we've had a lot of challenges with health. It's really hard to get out and walk down a street where everybody's parked right on the street all the way down, or if they're parked across the sidewalk. I never have understood this concept that we're going to put all the cars across the sidewalk that we put down the front of the street. So trying to get those things changed so that we can create better quality of life. And then there was an interest in low impact development strategies. And so this is actually the goal that was in the 2018 master plan. I think it's kind of been achieved mostly, but it was a really short-term goal. So the community is really interested in getting this done as soon as possible. Some of that is, again, in response to some of the growth that was being seen and has continued to be seen. So the city wanted to get out in front of that as part of implementing this comprehensive plan. Whoops, wrong way. So we started talking about, and these are actually slides I presented to the community back in like 2019, 2020. And we were talking about some of the goals of better land and stormwater management. It really started out as stormwater management, but when you start talking about stormwater management, you really have to start talking about land management, because what we know is you can't just do everything in the streams. If you let all the water go off the site, as Joan was talking about, the streams are not going to be able to handle it when we develop, because there's just too much water. And so we talked about a lot of the things that Joan already talked about, so I won't reread them. But I wanted to point out this one here: reduce infrastructure and maintenance costs and fiscal sustainability. I'm our water sustainability leader at HAF, and I preach fiscal sustainability because I think as a taxpayer, I want our cities and counties to be as fiscally sustainable as possible and not to subsidize development. It's good, we want smart development, but we don't want to subsidize it. So we need to do that development in ways that make sense for the community. And then this was a really big one, and I'm glad you brought up riparian zones, because there was a huge discussion about riparian zones in the Bernie area. Our riparian zones are our recharge features in this area. And those are not just Cibolo Creek, it's also the small fingers of creeks too. And so we really talked a lot about how much do we need to preserve to try to protect the water supply. I don't know if y'all know, Bernie has actually three main water supplies. One is Canyon Lake, the second one is Bernie City Lake, and the third one is actually wells that run along Cibolo Creek. And so most of that water is actually coming out of the shallow alluvial aquifer along Cibolo Creek. So we talked about, addressing these types of issues. This is actually a channel, this is 2013 we were talking about earlier. This is a channel in San Antonio, a nice concrete channel. Concrete channels don't require maintenance, right? Until they disintegrate, and then they're incredibly, incredibly expensive to repair. We also have a lot of problems with trash. And so we talked about all these things. Do we want to see this, or do we want to see a more natural stream that is more resilient? It requires less maintenance if we manage the water outside of the stream as new development comes in. Oops, I'm going to hit the right button here. So when we were presenting and talking to the city and the citizens about this, we talked about what measures reduce runoff to more natural conditions and what fits our region, right? We don't have a lot of wetlands like we have in Houston area around here, but we can actually have wetlands here that dry out and then get wet and then dry out and get wet. And it works. We have plants that will tolerate that environment. So we talked about all those kinds of things. What makes sense? What do we want to include? And so as we were going through this discussion, we started focusing in on first, protecting areas, natural areas and open space. That's the first thing when we talk about low impact development. It's not actually, let's go lay out our site plan and then figure out how we're going to try to manage the runoff from it. We want to actually look at our site. And so if you have a piece of property, or if you are going to be building a home, you really want to look at that property first from the standpoint of what are the things that we want to preserve on that site, and then figure out where's the best place to put the development or the house. Okay, that's what's really, really critical. Because if you destroy everything, or you put everything where it's going to destroy the best features on the site, you really can't replace those or mitigate. The easiest thing to think about is, right, a 100-year-old tree. If you cut down a 100-year-old tree, it's not going to be replaced in any of our lifetimes, right? So we want to think about preserving those. But then we talked about all these other BMPs: infiltration, bioretention, vegetated swales, permeable paving, rainwater harvesting, extended detention. And then source controls and prevention. This is things like just helping to reduce the trash that's being dumped, right? This is where we eliminate plastic bags. Unfortunately, in Texas, we're no longer allowed to do that because of our legislature. I hope we vote our conscience on that going forward. But that was a really bad decision, because we have plastic bags blowing everywhere around Texas, and we could eliminate them. But anyway, I'll get off my soapbox now. But so luckily, the San Antonio River Authority had actually developed, and I helped write this in 2013, was the Low Impact Development Guidance Manual. And so the city of Bernie was able to adopt that as their guidance manual for new development within the city. And so as we went through this process and we looked at where does Bernie want to go? What do we want to do? What do we want to require that landowners do? And this, we talked about, the third of an acre lot subdivisions all the way up to 10-acre lots. Because if you have 10 acres or even more, if you're not managing the soil, the plants, and the water, the runoff from that 10-acre site, you can have just as much impact as a densely developed subdivision if we don't do it right. And so we talked about how to manage all that together. And I will tell you that from what I've seen in the state of Texas, the city of Bernie has the most integrated and highest standards for stormwater management of anywhere, because they do require that whole pie chart that Joan showed to be managed. All that water, all those different events have to be managed. We're still doing floodplain management. We're still wanting to make sure that we're not putting water in people's houses, but we're doing integrated stormwater management that incorporates low impact development and does have a water quality requirement. And so these same types of concepts, though, that are required for new development in Bernie, they can apply to an existing piece of property, an existing house, your property, whoever, I don't know what properties y'all own, but these are things that can be retrofit back to properties too, especially ones, that have a little bit of room. It can be done on commercial properties and all that. And so this process set up establishing a model for protecting the upper Cibolo Creek. Now, the county adopted some of these measures. They didn't fully adopt this, but they do have a lot of good requirements in there to help protect the stream corridors, including things like buffers. So the city of Bernie has a buffer requirement. You may have heard of them. They're called drainage way protection zones. It's a term I came up with because nobody could agree what a stream was. Nobody could agree what a stream was. It was really funny. So I said, okay, well, they all drain. Let's just call them drainage way protection zones. So Bernie has very good requirements for drainage way protection zones to protect those buffers, or protect those riparian areas. Riparian buffers, riparian areas, either one. And so that's a really good setup for looking at how do we manage land in a more integrated way. So what can we do as individuals? And this is where we were really excited about. We were brainstorming a lot about what could we show, what are the things that can be done, what can you encourage your neighbors or your homeowners association or your friends or that business you go to. You're like, hey, this is an eyesore out front. You could do something here to take care of this. And so these are the things we wanted to really get into and talk about what can be done. So slowing it down, spreading it out, and soaking it in. Those are our three kind of big picture ideas. That's what we want to do with stormwater runoff. And when we soak it in, that ends up becoming our water supply, right? Which is really great. We're preserving our water supply. Everybody can do that. I'll show you some pictures of how I do it at my house on here. But those are the three key concepts we want to do. So what are some practical ways that we can do that on a residential scale? Easy one. Everybody thinks of this. I call it rainwater capture. It's not necessarily rainwater harvesting. Harvesting can be if you're going to reuse it for a different use, but you can just capture and slow it down and let it go into the ground more slowly after the rain event. These are typical examples of what we would call rain barrels. This is actually my house. This is a 1,000-gallon cistern that I have sitting off to the side of my house that I capture. I do capture it. I reuse it mostly only for gardening and for house plants and stuff. So that's an easy one. That can be done pretty much anywhere. And there are hundreds of different styles of these and sizes, and they're relatively inexpensive. You can create them out of concrete, the old water, standpipe water tanks. You can create them out of plastic. There are metal ones, there are wooden ones. There's all different kinds of those. So this is a great first step that everybody can do very, very easily. The side benefit, if you do use this on your house plants or on your garden, then you're reducing potable water use, so it helps our water supply. So disconnecting hard surfaces, I would love to see this more. Unfortunately, we don't necessarily require this from home builders and business construction or for commercial construction, but a simple thing of taking your downspout that comes off your house and putting it into a grassy area can reduce runoff as much as 70%. Even in soils that we have around here what we think are clay that don't infiltrate, they actually will infiltrate if you slow it down, spread it out, and let it soak in. Another easy way, here's an example. This is actually Oak Hills Church, if y'all know where that is on the way into San Antonio. This is their parking lot. Their parking lot drains across the sidewalk into a large grassy area. That spreads that water out. Instead of it all concentrating into one corner, it's coming across here in a lot of different areas and spreading out and being allowed to soak in. Simple things like that. The great thing about this is it gives, it's a landscaped area, so it helps the aesthetic of the site. It's not just one big giant parking lot, but it also then helps to slow that water down and clean it up. So another way is to slow down and sink it in by breaking up the hard surfaces. So these are different walkways that can be done. This can be done at your house. This is actually at my house. This is a parking area. We don't have sidewalks in my subdivision, and I wanted to have people come over and be able to park, on something that's a little more firm. And this is called plastic grid pavers. My son and I installed these in an afternoon. It's really easy to do. Right now, this is all covered in native grasses. That's actually wildflowers that I don't mow, much to the chagrin of my homeowners association sometimes. But I've been able to convince them that it's a good thing. And so this actually is an easy way if you need, a parking area, especially if it's something that's not being driven on every day, you can put these types of permeable pavers down. There are lots of different types of permeable pavers. These are just some examples, but anywhere you can break up that hard surface, allow that water to go into the soil and soak in, it will help reduce that runoff. All right, other things, bioswales, bioretention, these are temporary areas to store water and either filter it directly into the ground or filter it through a media and then out into the stream or the storm drain system. Any of those types of things, these are typically designed to capture that 1 to 2 inch storm. They're not gonna mitigate for the 100-year flood. That's not what they're designed for, but they will help for all those other events. These help a lot with nuisance flooding issues, street flooding issues. They actually help our streets to survive longer because our streets are a part of our drainage system. If we keep that water off the streets, the pavement actually lasts a lot longer. It's one of those fiscally sustainable things. It actually helps us to pay less taxes because there's less maintenance of the roads themselves. So these can be done anywhere. You may hear 2 terms for these. Sometimes they're called bioretention. Sometimes they're called rain gardens. They're kind of the same thing. The only real way we distinguish them, with bioretention, you're typically bringing a soil in that you're going to put in here to allow it to soak in. With a rain garden, you usually are just amending the soil that's already there. So if this was your front yard, you go out, you find an area where maybe your downspouts are draining into the yard, you dig it out, you create a little small depression. It's only going to be there generally 12 to 24 hours, and then you let that water collect there and then soak into the ground. Really easy to do. The picture at the very beginning was me and my kids digging some of those at a park in San Antonio. It's done at one of the community gardens in San Antonio. I didn't cut the curb. That was the hard part. They cut the curb with a big saw. But we got permission to do that, yes, from the city. And it took the water off the street and put it into these exact same type of features and then infiltrated. We doing all right on time? Okay, good. All right. Native landscaping we talked about. One of the best things about native landscaping is that it is water smart and it is drought resistant. This is actually my front yard right here. I built all that, and those are all native plants except for those, which are now gone. I took them out. That's a sago palm. I know, it was there. I had trouble moving it. It was pretty big, but I got it out of there eventually. And now it's replaced with some nice Turk's cap that are doing very well. They love that environment, and the hummingbirds just love those things. So this is all native sage, but just doing these kinds of things, putting in native, I have not watered this rain garden in 20 plus years. I haven't put a drop of water into it. All the native plants do great. Water comes off the roof, waters all this, doing fine. So that's one of the great things. You can actually eliminate irrigation systems by putting in native plants and a soil that the plant can grow in. That's the key. We don't want too much compost in it. We don't want too much organic matter because our native plants a lot of times don't like a real high organic matter. So kind of limit your organic matter. But again, in the San Antonio River Authority LID design manual, there's some great guidance on how to set up soils for plants. All right, agricultural lands. Does anybody in here own agricultural lands? Anybody know anybody that has agricultural lands? Sure everybody knows, but there's a lot that can be done for agricultural lands. You probably know there's a lot of guidance out there already. We just looked up a few things. This is actually a training that has been done with NRCS and Texas A&M AgriLife. So there's lots of things out there. There's been a big push across Texas over the last, 20 plus years to try to protect our stream corridors, especially in agricultural areas. So prescribed grazing is one of the ways to do that. They're using it more and more. It kind of recreates what the buffalo did, which is kind of cool. You know, the buffalo would come through, they would graze an area, and then they would move on. That actually helped the native grasses to establish. They kind of became stronger, but they weren't pressured all the time. I'm sure everybody's been around here and seen a property of 5 acres that has 100 goats in it, and there's like not a speck of anything left on it. That's overpressuring. So, but with the prescribed grazing, we move them around, and we try to protect those riparian areas in those stream corridors. But lots can be done. Again, those resources are available online, pretty easy to find. So let's talk about schools, neighborhoods, and commercial. By the way, there is in Bernie's plan, there is a nature-based solutions project already to reduce flooding. So we can talk about that one because I came up with that one. And it happens to be at a school. That's what made me think about it. It's Bernie Middle School South, over behind there. But on the commercial scale, much larger cisterns. This happens to be at San Antonio River Authority's property. They put their money where their mouth is. And they have 2 very large cisterns off of one of their buildings that they use to capture the rainwater and use it for watering their property. This is kind of a cutaway of what they look like. So it's metal on the outside, but there's a liner on the inside that stops it from leaking so they don't leak. And they are repairable. I've heard of them being broken and then they can get inside there and repair them. So it's not that big a deal. These are like underground. We call these milk crates. They kind of look like milk crates, but they're used quite a bit. Phil Hardberger Park in San Antonio has a very large one of these actually underground. They capture all the runoff from their parking lots and then they use that runoff and that rainwater to irrigate the site. So lots of water can be done. I've seen some creative ones. They've put some of these in parking garages under hotels. And then they'll actually capture the rainwater and the condensate off the AC, and then they'll pump it up to the rooftop garden where the pool and everything is. And so what you typically do, well, there's 2 different ways to do it. You can either do like a typical storm drain system off a parking lot, so you'll have inlets, like the curb inlets, and it'll go in. The one at Phil Hardberger Park, they actually just put about 18 inches of a highly sandy soil on top, and the water just runs out on top and it spreads out and just soaks in and disappears. And then they store it inside this system.
Yeah, Troy, I think this is Confluence Park. Maybe the next slide shows.
Oh, the top one? Okay, yeah. I wasn't sure. I thought that was, but I wasn't sure if that was. So Confluence Park is down on the south of downtown in San Antonio. And there's a huge one there. And the one there is built under the parking lot, right? So the water, and it's permeable pavement, so that when the rain comes down directly on the parking lot, it just goes straight through and goes into the underground system.
Yeah, so this is during construction, but I think the next slide shows what it looks like on top.
Yep, there it is. So this is all permeable pavement. This is a different style. This is the brick paver style permeable pavement. And so oops, can I go back? Yeah, this is underneath there. And so it's stored underground. Yep. So I noticed the Honda dealership that's going in over here. I think they're doing underground detention with big giant round pipes, metal pipes. That's one way to do it. This is a better way to do it. I'll just say that. So in the long term, it's a lot better. You can store it. The nice thing about these is you can store that water, or they can put it in there and you can actually allow it to soak in underground too. So it's another way to spread that water out and slow it down and soak it in. These are readily available. There's several companies in San Antonio that, did I do that? Didn't even think I don't think I can. Just hit print. I wonder where that would come out. Yeah, that was weird.
Are you able to advance?
Yeah, we'll just go with that. Okay. All right, again, in commercial settings, these bioswales or bioretention basins, we have a lot of these around town. This is actually at the City of San Antonio's permitting center downtown. This one, a lot of times you'll see these, they'll have mulch around the plants, but this one they used rock mulch, which works just as good. It protects the soil, allows the water to go in. Has some advantages from a maintenance standpoint sometimes, but no irrigation in this, none at all. Once it's established, you let it go. The water that gets on the parking lot, the rainfall, it comes in here, it waters all the plants, and they do really well. We wanted to also leave y'all with a bunch of resources. I'm glad these are printed out because there's a bunch of them on here and some of them are pretty small. But City of Bernie has that water conservation rebate program. They also, again, have the LID manual that can be used as a resource. There's a plant list in that, native plant list in that guide. The San Antonio, or the Bernie version of the San Antonio River Authority manual, which has just changed the foreword, is really all it is. But it's got a really great plant list in there for a lot of different types of settings. Remarkable Riparian is a great resource from the Oasis River Authority. It talks a lot about the health of the riparian zone, why it's so critical to protect it, and how, kind of set up those buffer zones. Hill Country Alliance has a lot of good resources. I know the Cibolo Center does a lot with the Hill Country Alliance, but they've got great resources on riparian planting, and they're doing a lot with communities too to try to advance these ideas. We talked about San Antonio River Authority. The stream restoration guide, that's if there's a stream that's already, theoretically it should be used for streams that aren't degraded also, but most of the time it's only used when we're trying to restore a stream. We can protect streams with the concepts that are in there. But that guide will help if there's a segment of a stream that maybe has already kind of been wiped out by agricultural practices, which is very common, or it is looking like the one that Joan showed that there was a lot of erosion on it. The stream restoration techniques can help stabilize that. We need to do it watershed wide too. We have to control water watershed wide, but that will help with kind of spot treatment. San Antonio Water System does have a lot of water saver coupons and rebates. They actually just have a lot of great resources for native landscaping and how to reduce water usage. The Hill Country chapter of the Texas Master Naturalist has a LMAP program. Have y'all heard of this? Land Management Assistance Program. It is a free program. They will come to your property and help you look at your property and figure out how to manage it with native plants. They will apparently help you identify invasive species, help you maybe adapt some of your landscaping and your lawn care to better preserve your soil health and to help establish more than the native species. And then the Guadalupe Blanco River Authority has a lot of education too on watershed management.
I have one more. The Native
Yes, ma'am.
Plant Society of Texas has a very good
Yeah, and the,
native plant database.
They're a very good partner to the whole community, they really are.
yeah, I think they're partnered too with the Lady Bird Johnson Wildflower Center. They have a great database of native plants. I use that one all the time to try to figure out what plants are going to fit in certain areas. So anyway, that's the end of our prepared slides. We're right at 7 o'clock, but we will answer any questions anybody has. Or any thoughts? Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'm going to assume the answer is no, because you guys have talked a lot about rainwater capture and rainwater harvesting and sequestering of water, but we're originally from Colorado, and in Colorado, a lot of the municipalities actually have restrictions against water rights.
Right.
So we need to let so much flow go downriver.
Right.
Do we have any, does Bexar County have any obligation to let a certain amount of water flow down?
There are not restrictions on rainwater capture in Texas. In fact, there are tax credits for it in Texas. When you buy rainwater harvesting equipment, it is tax-free in Texas. So, and there's some really great guides that Texas A&M AgriLife have put out. Actually, I saw a map that Meadows Center, Robert Mace at the Meadows Center put out recently that shows kind of how much water you have to store to make it through the drought of record using rainwater harvesting. So currently, no, there is not. It's not widespread enough that it's been an issue with downstream water rights. It should be looked at a little more carefully, but it's going to take a lot more people doing it before it's really going to impact things. Colorado has backed off a little bit on that too. There have been some areas that they have started to allow it with some certain restrictions. So they recognize that, some of that water's lost anyway, so why not let the homeowner capture some of it and use it? Yes.
I have a new homeowner question.
Okay.
Who is still understanding all of the bills. So we live in a highly compacted new development, very small yards. You know, you're 5 feet away from your neighbor.
Yep.
Why does the water bill go up with runoff and storms and stuff like that? I've noticed that we're charged for runoff in our bill.
Right.
And so could you explain that? And then in my postage size stamp yard, how do I manage runoff and help, you know, even benefit my own utility costs? Is that possible?
So
Or
do
is
you
it
live
an
in
average?
Bernie?
No, I live in San Antonio.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure, it shouldn't go up when it's raining. I mean, your overall utility bill is set by your water usage and then your minimum wastewater fee. And then the city of San Antonio does have a stormwater utility fee like Bernie does. And so that rate should be set based on how big your lot is. It's an annual rate that's just kind of set. And so that shouldn't change over time. If it is, I swear I didn't touch it that time. It went to sleep. You can contact the city of San Antonio to kind of get a breakdown on that, but it shouldn't be changing. I mean, I looked at their program a few years ago, and it's a set fee based on the size of your lot. Things you can do, downspout disconnection is a really good one. The rainwater capture, you can capture that water and then you can just let it dribble out into the yard over 24 hours too, and that has the same kind of benefit. It still slows that water down and reduces that runoff. Other things is making sure that your turf grasses are native. I know it's tricky in homeowners associations, that they are a challenge. They have been further restricted from restricting homeowners from doing things that reduce water usage. There was a bill that actually passed in this last legislative session that restricted homeowners associations from requiring watering during droughts. Yeah. It was really, and they were actually, the homeowners associations were actually fining homeowners for not having a green lawn during a drought, which made no sense, right? So there was a state bill that was actually passed. So look and see what your homeowners association allows. A lot of them still will allow xeriscaping, replacing lawns, things like that. And since you live in the city of San Antonio, SAWS has a great website on that, and they have some really great ideas. And I think they might even come out to your house and help you with that. Okay, good.
I have a couple of small questions.
Sure.
What do you consider a native turf grass?
So the only real native turf grass we have here is buffalo grass. That is the only true native one that, at least from the master naturalists and the Native Plant Society that I've talked to, that's what they've said, and the SARA staff. So that's what we use there. It's hard to find sometimes, but you can get it. You can get it from seed. Really what we have here in a natural setting is we don't have turf grasses, we have bunch grasses. And so if you allow the bunch grasses to grow and let them get tall enough, they pretty much just block everything off anyway. And so that's what I would suggest. That's what I do in my yard.
And then the rock mulch, what is a rock mulch?
So it's just really putting down river rock or some kind of decorative rock, not decomposed granite.
Yeah, that's a
not
great medium
decomposed
for
granite.
growing everything.
Yes, and people think it's permeable. It's not permeable, it's impermeable.
Okay.
And it tracks everywhere. But you can get washed crushed granite, which will do the same thing. It's a rock mulch. It's just really protecting the soil. And one of the key things, let me go back. Man, if you remember back to that, no, it's all right. It doesn't maybe it likes you better. I don't know. It's me. If you remember that picture that I showed where the rock mulch was, so one of the nice things about using it at those settings, and there's actually an example of it fairly close to here, you know where the Lemon Creek HEB is? If you turn right instead of going left.
You just passed it.
Oh, there it is. No, right here.
Is it?
Right here. So what the rock mulch also does here is it helps when that water's running off, it helps dissipate the energy here and slow the water down and kind of spread it out, because underneath here is a soil media and we don't want that to erode out. So this rock mulch will do the same type of thing. In a lot of other cases, and especially depending on what pollutants we're looking at, if there's a lot of oil and grease, we like to use the bark mulch because that will actually absorb the oil and the grease before it can kind of push through the soil.
Okay. And then, Joan, you mentioned the Upper Cibolo Creek watershed projects, but I don't know if I was drifting off or not listening, but what are those projects? What examples are they?
We have not come up with them yet. So
What would be
there
your
just
goals?
were none.
Yeah, what would be your goals up there?
Yeah, so we just kicked this off. So this is going to be a 3-year study. So we look at the hydraulic models, the hydrology models, and we see where areas would be optimal for project locations. And that's just based on engineering and science. So not yet getting into what all the constraints would be like public-private land, so on. So once we figure out that, we then look at what projects would be appropriate for those locations and whether that's restoring habitat or an ecosystem restoration. If we find a riparian buffer that has been degraded and we would like to restore it, different projects, low impact projects around the city. So we really don't have a set list of projects yet. It's more, once we figure out where, we would figure out what the best kind of project would be. So you didn't miss it. There just aren't any.
So what's been the reaction of the development community to all these? Are subdivisions being required to implement any of these practices?
Yes, in Bernie, all new development that comes in after a certain date. Now, the problem we have in the development world, right, is there's a thing called grandfathering. And so depending on when they submitted their first any kind of permit or request for a permit to a city, then they're grandfathered to the code on that date. But yes, we have new developments. There's quite a few of them in Bernie that have come in that are requiring these. We actually work with Jeff Carroll and his team over at the city of Bernie to review a lot of those, so I end up seeing a lot of them that are here in town. And then Shoreline Park actually is probably was the first one that required it. It's out on Bernie City Lake. That's actually where I came from right before this to go check on one of those installations. And there were butterflies all over the plants. It was cool, yeah. Yeah. It's working. We're creating habitat, yep.
I have a question. We live in an area that had a flowing creek at one point, and the rumor is that there's a farmer upstream from that that's dammed it. Is that legal?
It depends, unfortunately. It depends on if it's classified as state water or not. If it's a state water, they can't dam it without a permit. If it's not classified as state water, then like if it's a stock pond or something like that, they are allowed to put that in.
What determines whether water is state water or not?
If it's defined as a blue line on one of the maps that the state has, then that's a state water.
It's called a creek.
Is it a named creek?
Yes, it's a
Okay.
named creek. It's Sabina's Creek.
Okay.
It's not in the Cibolo watershed.
Okay.
But it's in the Trinity
Aquifer area. Yeah.
area. And when we all moved in, it was flowing. And
Okay.
partially because of the drought, I think that's stopped part of it.
It's
But we don't
impacted a
know,
lot.
we
Yep.
don't know where the headwaters are.
Oh, really? Okay.
It flows to the Guadalupe, I believe. I'm not really sure, though.
Mm-hmm.
Who would we talk to about that?
Who do we talk to?
That's going to be a TC, or actually that's a Texas Water Development Board, water rights.
Texas. who?
Texas Water Development Board.
Texas Water
Yeah,
Development.
that's a water rights question more than anything. Yeah.
How would we find out where the headwaters are, which direction it flow? Well, to me, it was flowing toward the Guadalupe, wasn't it? When it,
I've
because
never seen it flow.
well, it was flowing toward the Guadalupe
It
the
used to
last
be
time
like
I saw
4
it.
feet deep when we
Yeah,
moved in. 'cause,
Okay.
and
like,
it's
swim in it.
nothing now. We have beautiful bald cypress
dry.
trees that are dying
Mm-hmm.
because there's no water.
Let's investigate right now.
Let's go, come on. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's the question is, who do we talk to?
Yeah, who do we talk
It would,
Like, is
it
there a
would be the
person?
Texas Water Development Board. They have They have an enforcement division in their water rights. That's who you'd have to look for, or if there's is there a water master? There should be a water master for the Guadalupe Basin too. They're usually somebody that's
The
local.
water master.
A water master, yeah. They're in charge of all the water rights. Yeah.
It's like water wizard would be better, but.
It could, if it's a navigable water, or if it's considered, jurisdictional waters, which of course just
It's
changed.
not navigable. It's
Well,
barely as wide as this.
Then definition of navigable is,
I know.
and it's changed many times,
When it
but,
had water in it, you could paddleboard or canoe down it.
okay, yeah,
When it did have.
yeah. I mean, we are in about a 6 or 7 year hydrologic drought too, so a lot of streams that used to flow are not
We're
flowing these
just
days.
miles from the Guadalupe. And,
Yeah.
I mean, that was up. and
Yeah.
there
We
was
didn't get any of that.
none of
Yeah, no, I understand. It's because
Okay,
we didn't get
cool.
any of the rain.
Now we know where to ask.
Now we know where to go.
Yep.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have another question?
Just one more. We are fortunate enough to have a 10-acre. It's not on a creek or of any sort, but we've done our best to restore the grasses and to maintain them. And I've oftentimes wondered, I know I'm doing something good for the watershed, but what exactly am I doing for the watershed? I mean, with those beautiful grasses, I mean, they're lovely, but what happens then?
You're a hero. No, I mean, when you say watershed, it's all of the area, right? It's not just riparian areas. I know we focused on that a lot, but the drainage area is just as important. And so you're in a drainage area, right? And so when it rains at your house, that water is infiltrating more, I'd say, likely if you're, yeah. I'm like, so you're improving the health of the aquifer, you're recharging water, you're also cleaning it. I'm like, if you don't have turf grass, you're probably not using fertilizer. Or if you have, say, like a driveway or a road, that water will come flow into that area. It gets filtered out. So you're helping improve water quality. You're also reducing the amount of water that is flowing to the streams. So you're helping with flooding. You're helping in so many different instances, improving the health of the soil, improving habitat.
Well, definitely yes to many of those things, except our driveway is at the bottom like the front.
Well, that's okay.
So I
Your
think-
roof then, maybe.
I think we'll be looking at some other options, maybe to mitigate that and disperse it a little bit. But at any rate, I've just wondered because the well is, what, 1,500 feet? At any rate, it's pretty far down
Yeah.
there. So I know those roots go deep, but they don't go that deep. So anyway, I'm
If you tie them all together.
One of the biggest things that we do when keeping our, thank you, I forgot. When we keep our grassed areas or our landscaped areas as native as possible is that we are allowing the small natural depressions that hold water to be there. You look at a typical lawn care guide and they talk about filling in every low spot, right? Well, a natural area has little low spots, and actually that's where things like acorns end up depositing and trees grow from. And so by leaving it natural, we allow those natural processes and that healthy soil to take over. I did that. I've been living in my house over here for 25 years, and when I moved in, there probably wasn't any healthy soil in the whole yard, and just by kind of letting the natural grasses come in, leaving it longer, not using pesticides to kill all the good bugs that are in the soil, it creates that healthy soil and creates that landscape, that overall landscape that helps to slow that water down. So if you look after a heavy rain, like even out here in a natural area, everywhere where those leaves kind of pile up into those little strings, that's actually a natural process that helps to slow that water down. We've eliminated that on our lawns. And it's actually why when we were working with the city of Bernie, and I've done it with the city of San Antonio too, we actually had to force the developers to recognize that lawns don't act like natural areas, and so you can't treat them the same in your calculations of runoff. And they pushed back and they pushed back and they pushed back, and then I said, no, this is what the national standards say. And so we can prove up that natural area manages water a completely different way than a lawn. And that's one of the big reasons why. So yeah, let those little natural areas form. I know they pond water, sometimes they can be a nuisance if you step in them, but they're not there very long most of the time. So. Yep. Yes, sir.
You're probably preaching to the choir here.
A little bit.
How do we get word to, or how do we affect the rest of the area? But when you sit in a Bernie City Council meeting, you hear there's 3 water users in the city of Bernie use 100,000 gallons of water a month. How do we get word to the Georges ranches and Esperanzas and the newer developments? How do we get word out to the HOAs and to those people that, hey, it's okay to have natural, you don't have to have, what's the really green stuff everybody has, the grass? Yeah, Bermuda and,
St. Augustine's the word.
You don't need that. You can go natural.
Right. Well, unfortunately, where most of the development is going right now is actually in the county. So you really got to get in front of the county. And they can, there's 2 or 3 commissioners that are really the ones that have pushed back on adopting more stringent ordinances or more stringent requirements. So other than that, it's just education. It's things like this. It's getting stuff on YouTube. It's talking to homeowners associations and making sure that they understand that we're all in it together. We're all trying to protect our watershed and preserve our water supply together, and all these things can help to do that. But it takes just getting people to understand that what they grew up with as a lawn is actually very unnatural. It comes from England. We are not in England. We do not have the climate of England. We do not need those lawns the way to be maintained that way. Our kids can still play in them. It's fine. They can play in the wildflowers. They don't care. I've proved it. My kids had plenty of fun. But yeah, it's just education. And a lot of that starts. You have to start with the little kids in schools. That's some of it. Which I know this facility does a lot of that work, which is great. Yeah, it's awesome. Okay. I'll repeat the question. So the question was, what are our thoughts? I'll let you jump in on this one too, because I'm not going to take the whole floor here. But my thoughts on mowing native grasses? It can be done twice a year, and it's fine. But mow it taller, right? And again, some of the guidance and some of these documents we put up here talk about those correct levels for mowing. I know the city of San Antonio actually has been working with UTSA to figure out for their drainage channels how less frequent they can mow. And a lot of it is the education. It's the neighbors complain, oh, you're not mowing the ditches. Well, the reason why is because we're trying to make sure the thing doesn't wash out the next time it rains, because that taller grass is healthier. And then what we know is that it actually lays over in those storm events, and it actually helps protect the soil underneath. And so in the big events, the grass will lay over, and then once once the flood event's over, it'll pop back up. And but you have to have it longer, and the native grasses do that much, much better. Yep.
One other question.
Sure.
How easy is it to convince people to capture water? You have the 1,000-gallon tank. How quickly do you save what your investment was? How quickly does that come back to you? Because a lot of people say, I don't want to sink $1,500 or $8,000 in a tank, and I'm only going to realize $100 a year savings. Those are all made-up figures in my head, so don't take those for anything with a grain of salt. But how do you convince people, or how often do people come up and say, hey, how much are you saving with your tank?
I haven't done the math on that. I would just do it for environmental reasons, right? Because I know, but you have one. So maybe you have an Excel sheet somewhere.
I do not have an Excel sheet. I'm not that good. No. It depends on the cost of water. I pay $8 per 1,000 gallons. So I paid for that tank in about 5 years probably. I have another one that I also use to water my garden. There have been programs around the country to actually have every homeowner be given one. And the people that garden love it. The people who don't ever get out of their house, it makes no difference. So it's partly about lifestyle, you know. That's why in the Bernie Code and actually in the San Antonio voluntary ordinance, those types of measures are not credited at the homeowner level. It's only at the subdivision level. So that's why it's required at the subdivision level, because it's really hard to try to get 500 homeowners to manage, you know, a cistern or a little rain barrel in a way that's going to, you know, help the overall watershed and mitigate. But I mean, there's lots of people that do it. There's lots of people in the hill country. I keep running into more and more people in Kendall County that are completely off of wells, completely and totally. It's pretty amazing. It's cool. So I think that's some of it is like, it's kind of that independence, you know, people are going off the grid with solar and things, and now they're going off the you know, the groundwater with trying to do.
Catching the sun up here and catching the water. down
Exactly, exactly, yeah.
So unfortunately, that's all the time that we have for tonight. I just want to take one more second to thank y'all. We have, I say it every week, but we have an unusually large amount of expertise just right around us, and it's so freely offered. It's a lovely thing, and I'm really grateful for it. Grateful for y'all's interest. Let's thank Joan and Troy one more time.